from a West Hills perspective, the end looks like this, that we have broadband access in every community, every household, every field for less than $12 a month. That's what we're after. It's an access issue. So when we start there, that's our ultimate goal. And we'll have success along the way. So let's address this just in 3 specific chunks from today. Say hi first to Jeff Weekly, who has been in the back. Thank you, Jeff, for joining us. He comes with a couple of perspectives. Let me ask you, what's on your mind, Jeff?
So thank you, Chancellor. First of all, I want to point out that this may be news to some of you in the audience, but on October 20th, the governor signed AB 1665, which actually lowered the definition of the speed of broadband to 10 megabit per second download and 1 megabit per second upload. And that was part of this $300 million increment to the CAF2 funding. And if that doesn't cause you pause, it should, because that's really moving in the wrong direction. Let me tell you and there's probably a lot of politics behind that, but you can bet that there were some big companies that made influence there. Now, let me tell you 2 stories, and then perhaps a call to action. So, many years ago, I was born in a little town called Cedar Falls, Iowa. And if you're into community broadband or municipal broadband, you may have heard of Cedar Falls, Iowa. It was highlighted in 2015 by then President Barack Obama. And anyone in that little city of about 35,000 people can have 100 megabit fiber to the home. They can have gigabit to the home. Businesses can choose gigabit, 10, 40, 100. I just checked the rates. It's $50 a month for gigabit internet at home. Wow, right? My little hometown is now seeing an economic renaissance like it's never seen before. When I left in the 80s and moved out here to California, it wasn't a place that had a future. It does now. I came out because I was part of the Navy, and I spent almost 30 years in various roles in the Navy, first in uniform and then as a civilian scientist. In 2015, I retired, and I moved to a little country in the South Pacific called New Zealand. And in New Zealand, I lived in a little village of 300 people. We had a dairy, which is what we call a place to buy milk and eggs and bread, and we had a coffee shop. That was about it. We were 60 miles from Wellington on a very rural, rocky coast. It's a lot like Big Sur. I could get 100 megabit per second internet service in this little village. Now, there's some differences between New Zealand and California. New Zealand only has 4 million people. California has almost 40 million people. New Zealand is the size of Colorado, and California is much bigger than that. And that poses some challenges. But if you mapped New Zealand on the United States and you put the very tip of the North Island at Portland, Maine, the very tip of the South Island, not including Stuart Island, would reach Panama City Beach, Florida. So it's a long, skinny country with lots of mountains and lots of difficult terrain. And in that regard, it looks a lot like California. So if a little Midwestern town like Cedar Falls, Iowa, can do it, and if a country out in the middle of the ocean, closest spot to New Zealand is 4-hour flight away, Australia. If a little country out in the middle of the ocean can do it, we should be able to do it in rural California as well. Now, I work at the University of California, Merced, and Gabe and I are here because we believe that our futures are shared with your futures. The kids that you're raising now are our students, our faculty, our grad students of the future, and they need to be prepared. So I am willing to stand here today and make a commitment on behalf of UC Merced that we will be an anchor for this effort here in Central California. We're on the map. We're ready to help. So my call to action to you is to figure out ways that we can help you help all of us. And I'm standing by.
And Jeff, that's a great segue. We do appreciate that. And as we started today, we said that this was not your typical academic Gab and Go conference. We said that we would walk out of here with a to-do list of tasks that would comprise our outcomes action report that would lead to the development of a proposal that will articulate our needs, where we want to go, and how we choose to get there with a particular technology solution. We know the following, that we already have interest from Microsoft and AT&T, who have offered to listen to us to plug into our pilot. I'd like to ask Linda, Gabe, and Robert to kind of run point on that piece for us, the three of you, to keep us posted on what that partnership might look like. Carl, earlier today you talked about broadband is not an option. Regulatory compliance requires it. We heard from Assembly Member Caballero. She has offered her staff to work with us in 2018 to plug our pilot into the larger development initiative and her work with the new California Farm Bill. We received during the course of the day today an email from Peter Ansell, her chief legislative aide, promising that they would support this effort. We also know that the work with Assemblymember Caballero and UC A&R, Gabe, and your team, that you're going to be assisting us for the on-farm broadband access data issue. And I think, Gabe, that can probably justify our request for accelerated funding and some partnerships I see coming out of that. Question for you, Gabe, real quickly. How can UC A&R provide that launching pad? We heard from the mayor of Coalinga about the scenic. Yeah. We heard from you earlier about the 5 Points piece as a resource for a community network.
I'll say that I stand with Jeff in that offer, and we have a unique relationship and connection into one of the most valuable broadband resources in the state of California, scenic, in my opinion, which has been really an ISP partner to us and has really been thinking outside the box with us about how we can serve rural communities. And so what I will offer is I'll stand here and say that we've now, through pretty significant expense, brought very high speed into our 5 Points location, and we will gladly create a model where we can expand that into the surrounding communities and in kind of a public-private partnership, middle mile approach, working with any local provider who wants to help partner with us to help be the service end on that partnership, and working with Scenic and really creating a model that we can launch off of a public site with public-funded investment, one-time investment to create the connection that then creates a very low-cost, high-speed connection back into the community.
Okay. And related to that, Gabe, do me a favor and make sure to connect with Jeff Mitchell of UC Cooperative, because he's going to be a piece of that pie too. And we've heard from some vendors already with technology solutions, Unwired and Vast Networks, among others, along with these other potential solutions. We know that Dennis from the Innovation Growers Institute over in Salinas and Western Growers has said they will partner with us in helping assist in the development of the proposal. He had to leave a little early. We heard from Executive Vice President William Bordeaux a little earlier, calling this a crisis, and that Harris Farms would be an advocate for the work that we do. I think the question for them will be, how does his role, along with others, work into the waterways with Westlands, but specific to Harris Farms, what can we do to tap into their knowledge and their existing capacity? So we will explore that with them. Robert, we obviously have a lot of gratitude for the work that you're doing and continue to do with West Hills in this Essential Elements series. You're going to be absolutely essential at the USDA level, and how and what we can do with the USDA. Can you make a couple of comments related, just things that are on top of your head on how and what we can do with you?
Well, I think, well, one of them, and this is all about collaboration, and so there are a lot of entities to collaborate with. I mean, you sort of basically, you've talked about the Westlands, but I'd say the irrigation districts should be looked at, and I'll give you the reason why in terms of planning is because they are natural collaborators and should be incorporated in simply because who do they serve? They serve farmers. And where do they supply their product? It's to the farm field, and that's what you're trying to reach. So they already have the connectivity in the sense of the linear right-of-ways delivering the water through the canals. They have a self-interest in this as well because of their controls of the water systems. If they can automate it, they can become more efficient. There's another connection is if you look at the irrigation districts, I don't know why, but I looked at the 1906 legislation that created that the irrigation districts are based on, and it reads, it's California legislation, but it reads an awful lot like a description of a cooperative. And as a cooperative, this could be the entity in California that's used to bring broadband in, because the history of electricity in the U.S. is how it was brought to the U.S. by USDA in the 30s, 40s, and 50s was creating rural electric cooperatives in the Midwest and the South. Now, we don't happen to really have that here, but the discussion at USDA now is if you want to bring broadband in, and this is happening in the Midwest and the South, the rural electric co-ops are the natural parties to do it. And so what's the equivalent to that here? It's the water districts, the irrigation districts. And I think there is some interest in DC. If you explain that to them, then they're very interested, I think, in that aspect of it to use water and instead of the electric co-ops as the means. And so there's an opportunity there. There clearly is interest in Washington on broadband infrastructure as a means of driving rural economic development. How that's going to come out, I don't know. But the discussion is, in the resource area, it is separate from the existing programs that Rocky talked about. So we have to wait and see what that opportunity is. And the other piece of advice is, many of the resources that you can use for broadband do not have the word broadband in it. And there's a lot out there. You talked about education. I don't think the word broadband is in any of those education resources that were used up to hook up the schools so they could all do the standardized testing. That was more for like helping the testing be done. But if the testing is, you got to use broadband, there's your opportunity.
And that opportunity really came through loud and clear to me last week when Robert and I were at the California Economic Summit, and he came up to me, and we were at a rural broadband initiative for the Valley, and he said, "Hey, Stu, do you realize just what happened today in D.C.?" I said, "No." He said, Senator Perdue got up on the Senate floor and for the first time started talking about broadband in the field. It was unprecedented. It's on their minds. The time is ripe. The stars are aligned. Whatever we want to say, we're getting the ear of that federal government now. And that's what makes this opportunity to stand up this pilot so unique. Whether it's Microsoft not being in California, well, we've got an idea for you. Whether it's broadband access in the field with DC, hey, we've got an idea for you. That's why this proposal is so very important. Carl.
Yes, Stu, thank you. You're correct. I did talk earlier about the increased efficiency in reporting for the regulatory side for ag if broadband is available. But I need to talk about another very important factor. If my statistics are correct, and I think they're pretty close, about 60% of the farms in the Central Valley are 100 acres or less. And we find when we're working with those farms that oftentimes the folks do not speak English or have poor English skills. So I think that's another factor that has to be considered as we go through this. It's the Harris Ranches and the other big farms have technical people on staff. There's no issue there on working with them. They have the technical competence, but it's the little folks out there that maybe don't even speak English where we have real issues.
Right. And Rocky, don't want to forget you. If there's opportunities for Rocky and Robert, for you two to team up to really explore what look to be, modest opportunities within the parameters of all those grants and loans, but make sure you keep us posted on whether any of those elements fit into this pilot proposal. And vast networks, you said you weren't afraid to build, right? We're not. Okay, so we're going to hold you to that, and perhaps we can have representatives and maybe from Unwired there, Mark, in your shop on the group that begins to build this proposal for this ag tech pilot. Count you guys in on that.
Chancellor.
Yes.
One group that's not been mentioned, Dave mentioned it earlier. We've talked about with ISPs and VAST getting connection to the farm, but right now getting it across the field has not really been addressed. So there must be networking groups to do that,
Okay.
because I haven't heard of anyone here. It's definitely not our expertise, but that's really the next tech provider to get it across that distance.
Actually, there's some that are already working in that environment that are reaching out to them for that very reason, that they manage the farming community that have reached out to them, and they're looking for those solutions. So I can bring them on board.
Okay. And Sonia, stay in the loop on that too, because I'd like your perspective from your shop on that as well. Gabe, or Ish, excuse me, in the back. Good almond, Harris Ranch, right? Yeah, good stuff. Hey, can we count on Fresno State to kind of contribute your knowledge and some of the leadership work you're doing with San Joaquin Valley Partnership, maybe contribute to our efforts? I think what's very significant here with Fresno State is that what you all may not know is about 6 months ago, Ish and I went to lunch, we had a conversation, and there was a point in time where we were going our separate ways. They had some ideas, they had the existing pilot, they were already working with CETF. We had this big idea about solving this challenge on the west side once and for all. We got together and we talked, and we both were energized by what the other was doing. Fresno State has given 100% of their support to participating in this stand-up pilot. And I want to thank you for that, Ish, but I also want to know, that Get Connected piece, we're going to need your help in building this proposal, and I hope I can count on you for that.
Yeah, I think in terms of the literacy component of this proposal, it's an expertise area of our office, and working in the communities, doing the outreach, servicing the needs from the individual households. So, I think we can commit to supporting an element of your proposal that addresses that. And then also with the Regional Broadband Consortium, that's an existing platform that this group can decide to use or not use to convene further conversations beyond today. It's set up to do what we're doing today. So that could be a continued mechanism that we can work with you on.
Sounds great. And, one of the interests there that we have is that the California Emerging Technology Fund really serve as a potential source of funding.
Right.
And the expertise, and so things that you can do there. I'm going to ask Bob Gore of Gualco Group to help us on that part. Bob, you're around here somewhere. There, he left? Okay. Can't leave. So that
And
means
he's
West
definitely
Hills is off the
volunteered.
clock, right? Now, Bob's going to run point on that. The digital literacy component with Adelina that we heard a little earlier, you all think that should be part of the proposal? Kind of a little bit about what Ish is talking about. Does that make sense to include? Probably. Especially when you think about most of our communities are disadvantaged. And, that's, to me, an important part. So Adelina will continue to work with you on that and the work that you're doing with the State Technology Fund. And what about Jake? Jake Soberall, where are you at? There he is in the back from Bitwise. He illustrated a wonderful partnership we have with them. What about, Jake, you being a pilot consultant for us on this proposal? Does that ring any interest at your end? Okay, so we got Jake and Irma and Bitwise on board there. And if nothing else, I think really focusing on the aspirational goal setting of this. I think you're a marvelous ambassador for what this could be. And I'd really like your take on helping us build that and develop a narrative really to attract what you and I have talked about along with Frank in the past, those venture capitalists, those venture partners. So let's team up on that. Robin Kroc, Valley Vision, thank you for being here. Wonderful. Maybe get you involved in a little consulting gig with us on this? Okay, because we're going to need your help. Really that, from your YOLO experience, I think more than anything else, what you can help us with. We're aware of those rural broadband initiatives in the north and the far north and what you're doing in YOLO. And we've learned a little bit more about it through the Ag Tech Roundtable that we've first were introduced with some time ago with you. But you're going to lend a lot of critical narrative expertise to us, so I want to count on you for that. What about our farm of the future? Maybe a pilot research lab. What role could that play? Terry Brazzi, thanks for your work today, but I think you give some thought to what we might be able to do there as sort of the hub, the pilot research hub. This is a world-class operating farm, as you know. We have the infrastructure. Maybe it's something that we anchor there at the farm.
Hey, Stu.
Yep.
I'd love to create a bilateral UC West Hills partnership on that, because I think that we could create a really nice bilateral connection to have both UC students and faculty work with West Hills and vice versa.
Great. Thank you for that, Gabe. Any general comments? Any observations?
Well, I have one more thing to add to your list,
Yes,
Chancellor. As it happens, I am the conference chair for the Scenic Workshop, and you've heard Scenic mentioned a couple of times today. They are the nonprofit ISP to all of this higher education, K through 12, many libraries and cultural institutions. And every spring we get together to build community. And since nothing really great happens without a deadline, I would challenge this group to have something put together, at least sketched out, by the end of the month, which is when we have our proposal submission deadline, and you form a panel to tell us in the scenic community what it is you're going to do.
Okay.
And in that way, we can help you do it.
Okay. I'm in. That sounds great. Put something together conceptually and try to meet your deadline by the end of the month. Even though I'm going camping for a week at Thanksgiving,
We can probably extend that deadline for you.
Now you're talking. We appreciate that. Chancellor Emeritus, Frank, you had something? Telehealth? Good point.
And I think our friends at Fresno State can help again. San Joaquin Valley Partnership, been funded by 2 governors. I think it's coming up on our 12th year anniversary or something like that. But that group needs to endorse this project. Otherwise, they should fold up their tent.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, we had a nice conversation late last week with Pete Weber of the San Joaquin Valley Partnership, and we know there was a trailer bill funded by the legislature this last session that was really aimed at providing funding to distressed communities. He's asked West Hills to explore that with us, so maybe we can blend that in a little bit too in terms of it. But Davina, can we count on more in your leadership to help us with the technical elements of our proposal?
Absolutely. Happy to do it.
You want to make any other comments?
I appreciate sitting in this room of expertise. Broadband is not my expertise, and so listening to you guys and recognizing how to put it together for the benefit of our communities in medicine is really very helpful. So thank you to everyone and all your commitments to this process.
You bet. Well, how about a big round of applause for all the panelists, all the speakers today. I want to personally thank all of you for attending and hanging in there throughout the day. A big thanks to the West Hills staff behind the scene, Jeff Seed, Carlos Posadas, and Kathy Finster. Without them, this thing doesn't work. Thank you so much. Job well done, Linda Thomas. Your first Essential Elements series might have been the best one yet. Thank you. Harris Ranch Hospitality, I hope you all enjoyed it. We're already noodling up our themes for next year. Any final comments from you, Mr. Weekly? Are you good to go?
I think that the pump is primed, and we should just get to work.
I agree. I agree. Well, stay fueled. We have some almonds and juices on your way out in the back. Please feel free to grab those. And again, just on behalf of the entire West Hills District, thank you so much for participating. Let's get this thing solved, and look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you so much.